I want to welcome everyone to the maiden voyage, the very first Fexa and Friends Network show. Hopefully this will be nothing like the Titanic, and we will remain afloat, and even more importantly, worth watching and worth your time. A quick note about Fexa, this program's primary sponsor. For those of you who don't know Fexa, we create smart, flexible, and easy-to-use facility management software for multi-site companies. Fexa transforms business processes that finds efficiencies to save time and resources. For more information about Fexa, hop on over to Fexa at fexa.io and request a demo when you get a chance if you're interested. I'm Diana Hart, the host of the Fexa and Friends Network. And just so you know, the purpose of the Fexa Network is to be a place to offer education, best practices, and trend opinions to the multi-site facilities community. If you have a topic that you would like to see on future Fexa Network shows, or if you would like to be an educator yourself, please drop me a line at fexafriendsnetwork@fexa.io. And we are so happy that you have all joined us today, and we hope you continue to support this growing effort to educate and uplevel the facilities community by showing up and engaging with our topics. Next week, we'll be talking about how AI will be impacting the facilities management function. Watch your inbox for an invitation to that show too. And now we're going to focus on today's topic, 10 things you need to know to ensure a successful EV charging installation. I want to welcome my guest speaker, the expert Steve Turner from GPD Group. Steve has been helping the multi-site retail industry find impactful solutions that deliver revenue and profit for more than 20 years. As a strategy and growth leader with GPD, he has become an expert in helping companies understand the complexities and best practices for EV charging installations in their businesses. Welcome to the show, Steve.
Thank you so much. Thrilled to be here. Thrilled to be on the maiden voyage and get this thing kicked off. So let's have some fun today.
Absolutely. Hey, and as an elite member of my co-hosting squad, you have been bequeathed a magic Fexa Network mug.
Yep.
You know, Steve, all of the calories magically evaporate from everything you drink from that mug.
Excellent. Cheers.
Wink.
Thank you.
Take it away, Steve.
Thank you so much. Hello, everybody, and thanks for joining us today. We're going to spend some time talking real quick about GPD and why we're qualified to be involved in the EV game and EV charging and on this program. And then we're going to jump into talking about the things that we need to consider, or you need to consider if you're thinking about EV charging or implementing EV charging. So an overview of GPD at a glance. We are a nationally licensed full-service architecture, engineering, design firm, been doing this for quite a long time, working out of 13 offices, 760 odd people, and a very, very diverse organization. So we've got tremendous peripheral vision into best practices. Energy sector is one of those, and the other sector that I represent is our multi-site sector, and where those two intersect. And EV and solar fall in that energy sector. So next. From a multi-site perspective, just to understand us a little bit, if you think about us as a company supporting restaurant, retail, hospitality, we do prototype design and management for our clients. We help them with their multi-site branded rollouts. That's new builds, remodels, refreshes, and other programs like that at mass and at scale across the country. And we also help them with program management and asset management of those things. And as I mentioned before, EV charging and solar is coming into play more and more and more. So we touch about 2,000 projects a year for our hospitality and multi-site clients. And we manage design standards for many of them as well, which is a specialty capability. And for several of those, we've implemented standards of EV charging and solar into those prototypes or design standards. We are so fortunate as a company, blessed to be working with some of the best brands in the business. And we thank our clients for giving us this ability to do that. It helps us grow. It helps us become valuable inside the market, and we cherish these partnerships. With regard to EV charging specifically, we've been in this business since 2014. And, some of us in the business look at it and we think we may have touched about 25% of the EV charging infrastructure in this country. We've done over 20,000 EV charging stations across the country, most of them DC fast, and more than 2,000 sites nationally. And this is the way we help. We help with everything from conceptual design, site criteria definition and development, site assessments, which is critical when you're looking at EV charging sites, due diligence and utility coordination to make sure that we can get these things approved. And we can also make sure that power is sufficient and available to that site. Construction documentation to get approvals from the area having jurisdiction, and then supporting contractors and others through construction administration. And then again, so we can help our clients move at speed, developing those design standards and managing for them.
So, Steve, would you say this is the right order in which these things need to be done, generally speaking, and in every case from a strategic standpoint, when a decision is made to do an EV installation?
Yes, generally it is conceptual design and all the way through those paces. Some of them overlap, and it's not a linear process all the time. Some overlap as you're working through these, but yes, this is the way it typically falls out.
Are there any points in here where a decision could be made that would be a no-go situation? For example, with site assessment, does that ever come up where potentially where the location is at, maybe it's in an area where it isn't convenient, or where customers would have a hard time accessing a particular site, where maybe something else has to change and then it has to be reassessed at a future time? Does that ever happen in your experience?
All the time.
Okay.
And the folks on this site that do multi-site development, the same thing happens in retail and restaurant, where you think you've got an ultimate site and the area having jurisdiction is not going to permit it, or they're going to give you all kinds of issues with traffic and everything else. But if that comes in, we have a traffic studies group that can help understand what that traffic would be and help determine that it's not going to flow out into the main thoroughway or whatever. You've got the right kind of egress. But it does happen in EV charging too. If you're going to end up implementing a lot of DC fast charging in higher volumes, you may find out that power is not sufficient and available to that site right now. So you may make a purchase and you may have to delay your implementation, or pick a different location that can have access to the power that you need at that site. But we can help you work through all those paces.
Right. So that's why site assessment is so important before you move forward and make purchases or other decisions that would cost you more downstream.
Absolutely. We'll also help you find out through due diligence what it's going to take in terms of timing, in terms of what the area having jurisdiction is going to expect for you to do. Maybe it's landscaping, maybe it's a retention pond, maybe there's all kinds of things that communities come up with in order to help you get through the permitting process, let's say, and make sure it's appropriate for the community and for this development.
Okay, thank you. Move forward.
So last slide on this side, we've also been tremendously fortunate to work with some of the best and the best that are implementing EV charging and alternate power solutions. And again, very honored to work with these companies, and it's helped us build our prowess and expertise in this segment.
So one thing I'm curious about is, as I think through the fact that there are more and more people that are purchasing cars, electric vehicles now that are on the road, especially here in California where I live, I see them all over the place, especially the Tesla influence, but there are other cars as well. And this might be happening more and more across the country. And yet people want to take longer drives, and they want to be able to have some reassurances that they can actually successfully do that regardless of where they're going. But yet, what is the state of EV infrastructure right now in the United States? Is it realistically able to support EV cars as more and more people are making this investment, do you think?
I mean, the answer is yes. It's growing. You know, the U.S. Department of Transportation right now tells us there's somewhere in the neighborhood of 55 to 60,000 charging station locations in the U.S. right now, which is not near what we need in the long run. But this is an evolving state. Probably 145,000 level 2 and level 3 chargers, which are the ones that are sufficiently large enough in speed to give you a charge in a reasonable period of time, not the trickle charge that you do in your garage. So there is a network being built, and we are going to continue to do that. We're on the upswing of the hockey stick on that, and it's a burgeoning, growing market, and you've seen that in the press. And you know, the adoption will continue with regard to electric vehicles and alternate fuel vehicles, as well as the network build out.
So there's lots of reasons to think about investing.
Yes, absolutely. This is here to stay and here to grow for quite some time. So, and to the slide here, the reasons you would do it and the reason we're bumping into this and talking about this subject is, why would a multi-site or a hotel or hospitality or restaurant or retail think about bringing EV charging to their site? Today, you go to a fuel station, right? A gas station. But now this opens up a little bit where I can charge at work, I can charge at retail, I can charge at the mall, I can charge at my, you know, everywhere. So possible. Why do you do that? Attract new customers, right? Is the first way to do it. Second of all, if you want to attract new customers so that you can increase your foot traffic in the store, because the dwell times are much longer. It's about 5 minutes for, you know, 5 minutes to fill your tank up with gas on average. We'll talk about a little bit more about what the charging is right now. And it's also getting faster, but a little bit longer dwell time. So we want to capture that. You want to drive sales and revenues from the charging infrastructure itself, charging customers, as well as what additional revenue that may be to bring them into the store. And also, finally, as everybody may know, and that this next generation or the generations coming up are well aware of the values that brands represent these days and what their value systems are. And it's a great way to enhance your brand image through being sustainable and all of this zero emissions that everybody's striving for. It's helping that happen, and it's committing to that and all ESG types of things for your organization, especially if you're large.
Right. And especially if you're a large company and a publicly traded company, these things are becoming more and more issues of compliance. And Fexa is very well aware of those issues coming down the pike, and companies really have to think about their carbon footprint as far as that goes. So people are very, very well aware of these.
And it's the right thing to do. It is where the market's going right now. So
100%.
We're not going to stop this train. Might as well jump on. So let's jump right into the considerations and kind of blast through some of these, and we'll answer some questions too. So the first thing that you need to consider is your target audience, target customer, your current customer base, who you are targeting as additional customers or new customers, and what that audience is. Why? Because knowing that will help you understand what types of vehicles are going to show up at your facility. And based on what types of vehicles show up at your facility, that will tell you and guide you as to the types of charging options that you should consider, especially when you're entering that market. You know, whether it's Tesla, whether it's service trucks, whether it's a mix of trucks and passenger vehicles. And so understanding that audience is really critical. And it'll also then play into, you know, how do you evolve your brand with this new amenity to begin to capture more revenue? And we'll talk about that in a minute. So when you start understanding your audience and you understand who might be coming to charge, you need to look at what the charging speeds are and what that infrastructure needs to be.
So who are the top charging companies then that service?
Yeah, it's a great question. You know, a lot of people on the call may be familiar. ChargePoint is a huge player in the space, building their network, 32,000 locations and 65, 70,000 charging units. They focus mostly on level 2, which is a little bit slower charge than DC fast. And we'll talk about these. Tesla is probably the largest network of DC fast charging, which is level 3, 6,000 locations, 33,000 or so ports. Blink Charging, Electrify America has a heck of a network, and they're trying to grow. EV Connect, EV Go, many of these we're already working with, but every one of them are growing. Some are focusing more on DC fast charging. Most of them have a mix of both, but it seems like they're focusing one way or the other. Like ChargePoint, for instance, the majority of their network looks like it's level 2, though they are deploying a lot of level 3 fast charging as well. So that's what the landscape looks like right now. And when you think about charging speeds too, just to ground everybody, you may be familiar with this, you may not. If you're looking at level 2 charging, you're coming off of house power, primarily 208 or 240 power, and you're putting a few chargers in. If you start getting into 8, 10, 12 or more, you're going to have to look at a different power scheme. They'll pull more power. But for an automobile, an EV, full EV, not a hybrid, in about an hour, you'll pick up 10 to 20 miles of charge. And if you want a full charge from empty, you're probably talking somewhere 4 to 8 hours. It's a decent time. So nobody would be showing up at a retailer, in my opinion, to get a full charge, unless they just wanted to sit in their car for a while and watch movies on Netflix. So if you are such a retailer like a QSR or something of those ilk, you would probably want to look at DC fast charging, which in an hour you could get a full charge, 20 minutes to an hour. In an hour, you're going to pick up 180 miles to 200 miles maybe of charge potentially. And these are changing rapidly too. So keep that in mind. The batteries are getting more sophisticated and better. The distances that a car can travel are getting better. The equipment is moving very fast, the capabilities and the speeds of which you can charge vehicles. So it's something to take into consideration as you begin to implement things to keep your options open and continue to keep looking at this. We're finding out that a lot of the clients that come to us are thinking about putting charging posts way off in a corner somewhere where they've just got space. And our challenge to them is that really what you want to do? Because when you have a customer that has a longer dwell time showing up at your site, the customer experience, just like it is inside your store, that customer journey is really critical. Otherwise, they're not going to come and they're not going to use it. And you also want to capture that dwell time when they're on site. If they dwell longer, the chances are they're going to invest and spend more money with you. So visibility and ease of access is critical. ADA compliance is critical. Safety and making sure it's well lit is critical. And having a direct path from where those charging units are to the location. I mean, we've even had clients say, well, we want to put it here. And we're saying, well, why would you put it there? Because basically, if I took the hoses and put them to the car, you're dragging those across the sidewalk. You're going to want to bring those out and be closer to the vehicle. And there's a lot of considerations, and we help clients all the time think through all this.
Right, because the last thing you want to do is spend the time, money, effort to install all of this and then have people not use them.
Use it,
or have problems using them, and then
it's
use up store staff time. Yeah, or for it not to be convenient.
Or unsafe. I mean, if they were to implement what they showed, people would trip over those cords or have to walk around those cords. And you just don't want your customers doing that. And they just didn't fully think through it. I don't think that's what they wanted. They just didn't think through it. The number of charging stations and location, as I just talked, is key. We talked about ADA, site layout, accessibility, future expansion. Every single client we've talked to says, help us future-proof this.
Yeah.
Very difficult thing to do with this market moving as fast as it is. But I would say generally, if you want to future-proof an EV implementation, you will likely need to go to DC fast charging. Not always, depends on your client base and customer base, but the reason is DC fast charging, you will need to pull separate power to your location. You will not be able to come off of house power for the most part, unless your site is set up some way that you've got an excess of power based on what you're trying to run on that site already. But you'll usually bring in additional new power source, new switch box, new electrical, and it's quite a bit more expensive and extensive, but it gives you the ability to scale.
And also, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Go ahead.
Especially for, if there are any C stores on site. I mean, on the call right now. I mean, you're gonna eventually transition to maybe 50% EV, 50% petroleum. I mean, you're talking about a good number of sites, good number of charging stations on site, and you need to get prepared to do that. You might as well run conduit today, for instance, that's big enough to support the addition of additional runs and the additional power that needs to be there versus being so short-sighted that you're looking at first in costs. So, but we can help, we and others can help you think through all of that.
Well, the thought that occurred to me too now, a couple of things. Number one, I think future C stores are probably going to be built with this capability baked in. As they build those sites, they're probably going to be bringing in the electrical capability to do level 3 fast charging, so that it's not, that retrofit becomes less and less maybe a consideration potentially. And then the other thing I'm thinking about that fast charging makes sense for is that a lot of people are charging their cars in their homes overnight, and they have, call it whatever, 300 miles worth of charging already on their cars if they're doing those drip charging options at home. And so they're going to need fast charging if they're running around during the day. They don't necessarily need to sit somewhere for an hour or 2 or 3. So I think the fast charging option is probably going to become more and more a consideration down the road.
I agree. And it's a whole nother discussion, but I think the C-store market, their offer in store as EV becomes more prevalent is going to change, because people won't need to stop as often as they do today for petrol, right, because they're going to get it at home, get it at the office, get it at the mall, get it at the 100%. Grocery, everywhere. So a whole nother discussion. Revenue generation is something you need to think about. How are you going to charge for the charge? Some are.
You just coined a term. Charge for the charge.
Charge for the charge. Some are not. Some are looking at it as an amenity to attract customers to the store. Right. Some are trying to charge, getting on a network and trying to charge. If you do think about charging, look at payment options with, mobile applications, RFID, credit cards. Obviously cash isn't going to happen here. You're not going to put cash in an EV charging station anytime soon that I could think of. But while you have them on site, the other revenue generation, don't forget the in-store traffic. That's one of the whole reasons to have this amenity. I did some looking. Path Intelligence in late 2021 said that there's a significant relation between dwell time in store and the basket size. How much a customer spends. In fact, they said for every 1% of incremental dwell time, there's a 1.3% increase in sales.
Wow.
So just if you look at it, I'm not going to go through all the math real quick, but to fill a petrol car up, it's 5 minutes or less, right? And the average in store, I think, is 2 to 2.5 minutes inside a convenience store when they fill up. Not to always focus on the convenience store, but for instance, in that space, if you're gonna do a DC fast or even level 2 charging, you've got a minimum of 20 minutes if you want to get a decent amount of charge. You're going to be there quite, a lot longer. So the option to build the basket half again as big or twice as big could potentially be there if they're going to stay on site for any period of time. I think it is very likely that could happen. They're going to spend more time. They're going to spend more on food or a food option or product in store. The longer they dwell, the longer they look, the more they're going to buy. And you should be thinking about that and enticing them to do so. And that in turn may help pay for the charging stations in the first place and add revenue and profits to your
Right.
top and bottom
And it can
line.
also be part of a loyalty program or club discount program, which a lot of stores offer. Even currently here in California, the Safeway chain offers a discount on gas currently with their stores that offer gasoline. And so something along those lines can also help revenue generation if a store wanted to do that as well. So there's lots of ways to use this as a revenue generation experience and a branding generation experience.
Absolutely, and it would be wise for them to think about it. There are equipment manufacturers too that are creating very large displays on these as well that can be used for advertising as well. So
wow,
and I know that
wow,
people are seeing CVS, Walgreens, and others use that advertising to allow Johnson & Johnson, Bayer, whoever their product suppliers are to buy time on that to drive sales and to drive their PR and marketing efforts. If you're going to implement, think about networking. You need to network these devices. The way that people find out about charging availability is through your mobile app and through the intelligence in the car. So if you're not networked, how are they going to find you? If they're not networked, how do you monitor these? How do you maintain these when they go down? So you don't have to create this from scratch. It's not like creating an Oracle app for your business. There are companies out there that do that, like Current, GreenFlow, Ampex, Charge Lab, Shell Recharge, EV Box, ChargePoint. There's a lot of applications out there that you can run on and leverage, and you need to evaluate those and figure out what's right for your business. But you do want that intelligence. You do want to make sure that you keep these live. You do want to make sure that you proactively maintain them, and that your customers or would-be customers know that you're available and the charging unit is operational. So if you don't want to go it alone, we've got some clients that are partnering with charging network providers. And when we talk about that, we're talking about, maybe partnering with ChargePoint or EVgo, or we've got clients of ours in the retail and restaurant space that are implementing Tesla chargers on their site, because all those charging companies are actively selling to the entire market, to hotel chains, to restaurants, to grocers. They want to put their charges and leverage that network and those locations to put their chargers in. It could be an economical way for you to start getting into the infrastructure and provide it at your site. The next would be all of the considerations, which falls right in our bailiwick of engineering, design, permitting, and regulations. All EV sites, no matter how large or small, need to be permitted. At the level 2, L2 level, it may be pulling a trades permit with an electrician, but at level 3, it's always the area having jurisdiction in a major, construction document set. And that's what we create, and others can as well. Installation's critical. It's not just like popping up a piece of equipment. Whoever does your installation, hopefully it's the contractor that's building your site or that you've got a relationship with, but they need to be able to be certified to install it. And then they need to be able to certify that it's operational. So they're going to have either an electric vehicle or the semblance of the battery, on that truck, or something that will allow them to certify that unit as operational before it goes. And so will the jurisdiction certify that it's operational and want to know that.
Okay, Steve, we got to cut to the chase.
Yep. Cost and funding. Really critical.
What are we looking at? Break it to me gently.
So these numbers continue to come down, but I'm talking about here, remember, all in cost. I'm talking about
so everything. Because I'm sure there's hidden cost and upfront cost and planning costs and assessment costs and
all in design, implementation, permitting, all of that. For level 2, what we're seeing somewhere in the 20 to 30K per station, which is 2 posts. most of the
Two
time.
posts.
So you
So
get
that means two cars or
two vehicles.
two vehicles.
Somewhere all-in costs. And this will vary. These are approximates. So I don't want anybody shooting me nasty chats or anything. It's somewhere in the 20 to 30K all in.
Okay.
If you're going to go to DC fast level 3, the number hikes pretty fast because of all the power requirements, switch box, everything. It's probably 75K plus, depending on what you're implementing. This is the equipment. This is everything. But don't get too discouraged. And if you're thinking about it, think about it now. There is funding available from NEVI sources, which is the National EV Infrastructure Act. And a lot of you are aware of this. It does take some time and effort to understand this and go through it. There are companies out there that can help you work through it. We don't do that, unfortunately. It's just a very complex environment. The VW diesel emissions program has some money that some have been using, as well as there's a lot of state programs and local community programs that are helping. So I know of many clients and many organizations that have gotten units almost fully funded. Will that last forever? Probably not. But while it's available, capture it and take advantage of it.
Agreed.
So the last couple things quickly: sustainability and brand image, and it also goes along. You can pop the last one up too, because these kind of go together. We talked before about sustainability and the zero emissions and everything else. This is the right thing to do. And if your brand believes in it and you've got ESG initiatives and everything else, you should be considering implementing EV charging for your customers if it makes sense, and build that brand image. And then once you do that, leverage your promotional and marketing teams to get this into the market, so they know what you're doing for the environment, they know what you're doing for the customer, they know what you're doing, across the board to be a good steward of our environment and our planet and everything else. So very complex. There's a lot to it, but we say don't go it alone. There's experts like GPD and others in the market that are happy to help you think through things. We as a consultant will be brutally honest. We will tell you the good, bad, and the ugly about what you're trying to do, and we'll try and steer you toward getting it done the most efficient and effective way possible.
Wow. Unbelievable. Lots of considerations. More than I had ever imagined, but that I'm learning too. So thank you so much, Steve. I hope that everyone got some great ideas and took away some great pointers from this presentation. We have a couple of minutes. If anyone has any questions for Steve, throughout the presentation, a couple of questions have come through. So Steve, if you wouldn't mind hanging in there for just a minute, sure. I'm going to look and see if I have any that the group might be interested to hear about. If you have any questions, just feel free to type those into the webinar chat box, and I will see them, and I will relay them to Steve if it makes sense to do so. So let's see what's come up here. Okay, Steve, how about this one? On average, how long does it take to get a permit? Oh, this is a good one. A permit for an EV charging solution or station. What amount of time does it take on average?
Those of you who are in the multi-site world, developing sites and everything, I'm going to take the fifth on this one. No, I'm just teasing. The answer is it depends.
Oh no, it's a terrible answer.
It depends on the jurisdiction, and there are certain areas of the country that are more difficult than others. The key is you need to be diligent. This is not something where you put together plans and in the past days you throw it at the area having jurisdiction and you throw it in there and let it sit. You need an organization, architecture and engineering company like GPD that champion this thing through, that go talk to the community and understand what you're about ready to do and tell them what you're going to do and explain why it's happening the way it's happening and really champion that through. In California, they're all for it. and getting permitted is a little bit easier than it probably is in some other states that aren't as where it's not as prevalent. But I mean, across the country in general, this is well known that the infrastructure is necessary in moving this direction. So I don't think there's going to be too much. I don't think there's going to be too much pushback on it. But the community, since COVID, you guys are all watching it in a multi-unit development game. Getting permitted for anything is a bigger challenge today than it's ever been.
Yeah.
Gotta be really
but is that one of the first things you have to do as part of the process, probably early on as possible, is to start that permitting process?
Well, you're going to start your due diligence. You're going to find out really quickly, will the city allow it to happen, or that area of jurisdiction? And secondly, what are they going to expect? And if you know those things, you can plan for those and you can meet their expectations and take it back and explain to them why you have met their expectations and what they described to you. And hopefully they'll allow you to permit it much quicker. This is much quicker to get permitted than a whole build. If you're going to build your retail or restaurant or anything, those permits are more difficult to get than just an EV charging permit. But it still takes time. They've got a lot on their plates right now, and their staffs are not what they used to be.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, let's see what else is coming through. Here, okay, this one's interesting. I've never heard of this. Solar and EV charging solutions. Okay, so can solar and EV charging solutions complement each other? Can they work together? So I guess there are solar charging options out there. I've never never known about that. So can they work together?
They can. Often when EV charging is looked at, they're looking at some kind of canopy to cover that, just
okay.
like you would a fueling station. That could be electrified in terms of solar. It could be a solar canopy that is helping light the area or give back to the grid in one way, shape, or form. But we do a lot with solar with our clients, either solar fields for energy clients, or even putting solar on the canopy of a convenience store or on the top of a building, or what maybe. It's case by case, and we can help engineer to that. But yes, we are seeing it's just another alternate energy source, and part of the sustainability move that organizations are implementing. Solar homes, by the way, just depends on where you are in the country whether it makes sense or not. If you're in Florida, it probably does. If you're in Columbus, Ohio, like us,
not so much.
Not getting quite as much sun as they are, so
okay,
maybe a longer payback period.
Yeah,
but yes, they are considered together. They are also completely separate solutions, but they can tie together too.
But they can work together. Okay, who knew? Okay, that's amazing. Okay, well, I think that's about all I see coming through that makes sense right now to surface. I think I'm going to move us to the last slide, and just thanks to everyone who has joined us today for our inaugural Fexa and Friends Network show. I hope you've enjoyed the presentation and have gotten some great information from Steve today. Everything you wanted to know, but were afraid to ask about EV charging installations. I know I enjoyed the information, and this is not an area of specialty for me, but I absolutely learned a lot, and I hope you did too. We will be emailing everyone who registered a link to the recording of the show and a link to the presentation. So you'll be walking away with all of this great information. The Fexa website and the Fexa YouTube channel will also contain the Fexa Network shows and the resource library that can be viewed at any time, 24/7. So be on the lookout for future invitations to future shows, and we hope to see you here again at the Fexa and Friends Network. I want to thank you to everyone who joined us again today, and have a great day. And thank you again, Steve. We really appreciate your time and education today.
Well, thank you so much. We're super passionate about it, and we're here to help anybody if they need to talk and think through.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Be well.